I found out my future was gone when I saw the receipt on the kitchen counter. $48,000. Wire transfer. My entire college fund. Wiped clean, sent to some midwife clinic in Ohio for Jenna's new beginning. I remember standing there, fingers trembling, heart punching against my ribs like it wanted out. I wasn't supposed to see it. I was just grabbing a glass of water late at night after a double shift at the diner. But there it was. The proof that everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed for, had been handed to my sister like a bailout. She was 17. Pregnant. This time by a boy who didn't even bother sticking around long enough to learn the baby's name. And my mother, Saint Marilyn as she liked to call herself when she was sipping wine in the evenings, decided that family sticks together. Apparently, sticking together meant bleeding me dry. Let me rewind a little. My name is Kayla. I grew up in a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of a small town you'd miss if you blinked on the highway. My dad died when I was 6, cancer, and after that it was just me, Jenna, and our mother. I was the oldest. The invisible one. Jenna was the son. Loud, pretty, always getting into trouble and somehow never paying the price for it. My mom used to say, "Jenna's got spirit, Kayla. You need to loosen up." I wasn't uptight. I was tired. Tired of working 2 jobs to help with bills while Jenna partied and crashed borrowed cars. Tired of skipping field trips because we couldn't afford them, even though I knew the money had gone to buy Jenna her 3rd phone that year. Tired of keeping my mouth shut every time I watched my dreams get swallowed up so someone else could be saved. But I kept going. Because I thought if I worked hard enough, kept my head down long enough, one day I'd get out. I'd earn my escape. My college acceptance letter came on a Friday. Full ride for tuition but not room and board. That was what the savings were for, what Dad had started before he passed, what I had added to over the years with every babysitting gig, every birthday I skipped gifts for. $48,000. Enough to build a future. Gone. Just like that. I didn't confront my mom right away. I waited, let the storm settle inside me so I wouldn't scream. When I finally asked her why she'd stolen my future and handed it to someone who couldn't even take care of herself, she didn't flinch. "Kayla, she's a mother now. She needs help. You're smart, you'll figure something out." That's when it hit me. She didn't just take the money. She took the belief that I mattered less. That my pain was disposable. That I was the backup plan. So I packed a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't wait for apologies that wouldn't come. I left that house with $200 in my account and a resolve I didn't know I had. I slept in shelters for the first month. Got a job washing dishes in a bar that didn't ask too many questions. I found grants, begged for extra aid, worked every spare minute. I made it to school barely, but I made it. The first time I saw my name on the dean's list, I cried in a bathroom stall so no one would see me. Not because I was proud, though I was, but because it meant I didn't need them anymore. Years passed. I built a life. A small one. Humble. But it was mine. No one could take it this time. Then last winter I got a message request on Facebook. It was from Jenna. "Hey, can we talk? It's important. Mom's sick. I need your help." I stared at the screen for a long time, fingers hovering over the keys. I didn't block her. I didn't delete the message. I replied with just 2 words. "What happened?" Because the thing about betrayal is, it never really leaves you. Just waits. And I had waited a long time. The moment I stepped back into that house, it hit me. Nothing had changed and everything had. The same faded wallpaper curled at the corners. The same dusty family photo hung crooked in the hallway, my face partially obscured by glare, like even the glass knew I didn't belong. But the silence, that was new. Thick. Uncomfortable. A house that once echoed with slammed doors and Jenna's yelling was now quiet. Jenna met me at the door, her eyes sunken, mouth tight. She wasn't the golden girl anymore. Her hair was unbrushed, skin dull, and for the first time in her life she looked like she carried the weight of her own choices. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice low. "She's upstairs." I didn't hug her. She didn't try. We both knew this wasn't about healing. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each creak of the floorboard was a memory. Of nights I cried myself to sleep, of mornings I skipped breakfast so Jenna could eat, of all the birthdays where I was told, we'll celebrate later, and later never came. She was lying in bed. Marilyn. She looked smaller. Not just physically, though illness had definitely withered her, but in presence. My mother had always seemed tall even when seated. Towering, really, with that air of condescension she wore like a second skin. But now she looked like she'd collapsed inward. Eyes closed, breathing shallow. Stage 4, Jenna whispered from the doorway. Lung. She didn't tell anyone until it was too late. I didn't respond. I just stared. Because here's the thing. When someone who's broken you lays there dying, the grief doesn't come easy. You search for it. Try to summon it like it's your duty. But all I felt was a hollow ache. Not sadness. Not hate. Just emptiness. Jenna led me downstairs after a few moments. We sat at the kitchen table, once the site of so many screaming matches and silent dinners. She asked for you, Jenna said, pouring herself a coffee. Said she wanted to make things right. I scoffed. She wanted that before or after she wiped out my future? Jenna flinched. Good. She thought she was doing the right thing. I didn't ask for the money, Kayla. I didn't even know she used your account until it was gone. You didn't give it back, though. She stared at the table. She was all I had, Jenna whispered. And then, you left. I sat back, arms crossed. I left because I had to survive. Jenna's eyes welled with tears. But I didn't feel sorry. Not yet. That night I stayed. Not for them, for me. Closure, I guess. Some tiny part of me needed to see how it all ended. What became of the people who used me like a safety net and cut it when I needed it most? Mom was barely conscious when I checked on her. But her eyes fluttered open when I sat beside her. Kayla, she rasped. You're here. I nodded. For now. She reached out, her hand skeletal and cold. I was wrong. About so much. If I helped Jenna, I'd save her. You lost me in the process. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Of course it wasn't. But it was something. And for people like me, sometimes, something is all you get. Over the next few days I helped out. Ran errands. Filled prescriptions. Cooked bland food no one ate. I watched Jenna struggle to be a parent to her own daughter, a bright-eyed 4-year-old named Lila who kept calling me Auntie Kay. She didn't know the past. She just saw someone who made her pancakes and tied her shoes. Maybe that's why I didn't leave right away. But then on the third night I heard the yelling. Jenna. On the phone. In the hallway. No, I told you she's here now, Kayla. Yeah. The responsible one. I froze. She doesn't know yet, Jenna hissed. I'm trying to convince her. But if she signs the house over, we're good. The bank won't foreclose. Just chill. I've got this. The blood drained from my face. There was again. The pattern. They didn't call me because they missed me. They called me because they needed a new safety net. I stepped into the hallway, quiet as a shadow. Jenna didn't notice me until I said, "Convince me to do what?" He dropped the phone like it burned. Oh my God, Kayla. It's not what you think. No. I said, voice calm. Too calm. Because it sounds exactly like what I think. You're trying to guilt me into signing the house over. Probably pretending I want to help with the mortgage so you can sell it later. Lila needs a roof over her head. So did I. Her mouth opened but no words came. Just like before. But this time I wasn't the same girl who'd walked out of this house with nothing. I had options now. Leverage. And she had no idea what I was about to do. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch with an old blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the stars blur behind the fog of my breath. It was quiet again, too quiet. But now it wasn't grief or nostalgia that filled the silence. It was calculation. I had come back to see if forgiveness was possible. But they weren't sorry. They were just desperate. And once again they saw me as the solution to a problem they created. Jenna hadn't changed. She wasn't a victim. She was just better at playing the role now. And Mom? That half-hearted apology didn't erase the years of silence, or the betrayal written in those forged financial papers. I stared down at the manila envelope Jenna had dropped earlier that evening, thinking I hadn't noticed. Inside, a deed transfer. For the house. They'd already filled in most of the information. Just needed my signature. I laughed. Out loud. Bitter sharp thing. They didn't even wait for her to die. That morning I packed my bag. Slipped the envelope into it too just to keep up appearances. Jenna was at the kitchen table again, this time pretending to cry while scrolling Zillow listings on her phone. Probably dreaming of a fresh start, with money that wasn't hers. I'm heading out, I said calmly, slinging my duffel over my shoulder. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're leaving? What about Mom? She's barely. She has you, I cut in. You're her daughter, remember? I thought you forgave her. I came to see if she'd earned it. She didn't. Jenna looked like she might break into real tears for once. So that's it? You're just going to disappear again. I leaned in, voice low and clear. No, Jenna. I'm not disappearing. You are. Before she could react, I walked out. What she didn't know. I had already made a quiet stop at the county recorder's office. And while I hadn't signed the deed transfer she'd wanted, I had requested a full property history. The house, technically, was never solely in my mother's name. It had been co-owned with my late father. In his will, he had split everything equally between me and Jenna. But my share had been signed over, years ago, under false pretenses while I was still a teenager and unaware of my legal rights. I wasn't just robbed. I was defrauded. And that made it a legal issue. So I did what I should have done long ago. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a former classmate of mine. Sandra Rayburn. She was a pit bull in heels with a taste for revenge cases, especially ones involving family manipulation. When I told her the story, her eyes gleamed. You've got them, Kayla, she said. Dead to rights. She filed the petition within a week. Fraud. Forgery. Property theft. And yes, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Jenna was served at Mom's funeral. I didn't attend. I watched from a distance as Jenna's world collapsed. All those crocodile tears in front of Lila turned into frantic yelling matches with lawyers. She tried to play the victim again, but this time the courts weren't buying it. As I had the documents, the forged bank withdrawals, the falsified signature from when I was 19, the voice recording from the hallway, and my father's original will. She didn't just lose the house. She lost custody of Lila, for neglect and financial instability. I didn't cheer. I didn't scream. I just felt peace. A silence that wasn't heavy this time, but earned. One morning a few weeks later I got a knock on the door of my apartment. I opened it cautiously. There she was. Lila. Holding the hand of a social worker. I remember you, she said brightly. You make pancakes. My heart cracked. Hi, baby, I whispered. She asked for you, the social worker said gently. You're the only stable family she's mentioned. And just like that, the past didn't matter. The lies. The betrayal. Because in front of me stood something pure. Second chance. I took her hand. Lila moved in that weekend. She brought with her one small suitcase, a sketch pad, and the weight of too many broken promises. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't cry or act out or throw tantrums like most kids her age might. Instead, she tiptoed around the apartment like she was afraid it would all vanish if she made too much noise. That broke me more than anything else. We settled into a strange rhythm. He went to school. I packed her lunch. We had pancakes every Sunday. She drew pictures of houses with bright red doors and smiling suns in the corner. One night, after brushing her teeth, she came into my room holding a folded piece of paper. I drew our house, she said, crawling onto my bed. It was us, her and me, standing outside a cozy little home with flower boxes under the windows. I looked closer. There was a cat sitting on the porch. We don't have a cat, I said, smiling. Yet, she whispered. I kissed the top of her head. That moment, more than any court victory or legal win, was my real justice. But of course Jenna wasn't finished. She never went quietly. I got a call from my lawyer 2 months later. Jenna had filed an appeal, claiming undue influence, accusing me of manipulating our mother in her final days, and insisting that I had brainwashed Lila to get custody. It was laughable. Until it wasn't. Because with every accusation came court dates, paperwork, fees, and a slow drip of stress that seeped into my everyday life. I found myself locking the doors twice, checking windows, glancing over my shoulder in the grocery store. One afternoon, after picking Lila up from school, she turned to me and asked, "Why did Aunt Jenna lie so much?" I froze. "She said you were mean," she added. "But you're not. You're safe." Safe. That one word knocked the air from my lungs. I pulled over to the side of the road and looked her in the eyes. "I'm not perfect," I said softly. "But I'll never lie to you. And I'll never let anyone hurt you again." She nodded once and went back to her coloring book. But I meant every word. That night I stayed up late going through old photo albums, looking for something, anything, that could prove Jenna's lies. A timeline. A pattern. Something undeniable. And then I found it. An old VHS tape, labeled in my mom's handwriting, Kayla's 12th birthday. I didn't remember much about that day. Just a vague memory of cake and cousins and being forced to wear a scratchy pink dress. But as the tape rolled, something else came into focus. In the background, while the kids played, Mom and Jenna were whispering in the corner of the living room. The camera had caught the whole thing. I turned up the volume. "She won't even notice, Mom. She's a kid. Just say it's for her college fund or something." My blood ran cold. I rewound. Played it again. "She won't even notice, Mom." It wasn't just a one-time mistake. They had planned it. For years. They had been siphoning off what little money Dad had left for me. Starting from the day he died. And now, Jenna was trying to twist it all into a story where I was the villain. I digitized the tape that night. Sent it to Sandra. "This ends now," I told her. "I want her silenced. For good." Sandra didn't even hesitate. "She'll never get near Lila, or your name again." The next court hearing was brutal. Jenna came in dressed like a nun, crocodile tears ready, talking about sisterly love and misunderstandings. But when the judge saw the tape, her entire demeanor changed. And when the judge turned to her and said, "You've been stealing from your sister since she was 12 years old," the courtroom went silent. Sandra leaned over to me and whispered, "She's done." Jenna lost the appeal. Permanently. The judge not only reaffirmed my ownership of the house but also placed a no-contact order protecting both me and Lila. And Mom's estate? What was left of it? It was split the way it was supposed to be, equally. But after paying damages and legal fees, Jenna walked away with nothing but shame. Lila and I walked out of that courthouse hand in hand. Free. Really free this time. As we reached the parking lot, Lila looked up at me and asked, "Can we paint the front door red?" I laughed. "Anything you want, kiddo. You never really know strength until being strong is your only option." The next morning we painted the front door red. It was a small thing, really. A bucket of paint, a brush, the soft hum of a radio in the background, but it felt like reclaiming something. Like planting a flag in the soil of our new life and saying, "This is ours now." Lila wore one of my oversized t-shirts, splattered with red streaks by the end of the day, but her smile made every drip worth it. She stepped back to admire our work and declared, "Now it feels like home." And it did. But the peace didn't last long. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. No stamp. No return address. Just my name scribbled in rushed handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Jenna. Inside was a single sentence. "You might have won in court, but blood always bleeds through paint." There was no threat. No return address. Just those chilling words, cryptic and poisonous. I showed it to Sandra, who immediately filed it as a violation of the no-contact order. But deep down I knew Jenna wouldn't stop because people like her never believed they lost. That night I sat on the porch with a glass of wine while Lila slept peacefully inside. The red door glowed softly under the porch light and I realized something. Jenna's games only had power if I gave them energy. She fed on reactions. Control. Chaos. But now she had nothing left to feed on. No money. No leverage. No audience. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to live in fear anymore. And I wasn't going to teach Lila to live in fear either. I doubled down on building something real, something safe and joyful and full of new traditions. We planted a small garden in the backyard. I enrolled her in an art class. We started Friday movie nights, complete with popcorn and mismatched pajamas. Slowly we stitched together a life, one quiet moment at a time. Then one night as we were watching a movie, the doorbell rang. My heart stopped. It was late. Too late for guest. I motioned to Lila to stay put and walked cautiously to the door. Through the peephole I saw a man in a suit holding a manila folder. "Miss Carter?" he asked when I cracked the door. "Yes." He handed me the folder. "I'm sorry to bring this by so late. But it's about your mother's will. There was a supplemental document recently found in a storage unit. We believe it was intentionally concealed." My stomach dropped. "What kind of document?" He hesitated. "A handwritten letter. With specific instructions about Lila." I took the folder and closed the door, locking it behind me. Inside was a yellowed piece of paper, dated just 3 weeks before my mother's death. "If anything should happen to me and I'm not of sound mind to update my official documents, know this. Lila should never be raised by Jenna. I have made mistakes. I see them clearly now. If anyone can raise her with love and truth, it's Kayla. I regret so much. But not this." It was signed in shaky ink. I sat in silence, the letter trembling in my hands. For the first time in years I felt the weight of my mother's betrayal lift just a little. She had tried to make it right. Maybe not in time. Maybe not publicly. But in the end she knew the truth. And now I had proof. I took the letter to the court the next day. It didn't change the custody, thankfully that was already solid, but it put another nail in Jenna's coffin. Sandra filed it with the court records. "She'll never be able to manipulate this story again," she said. "The truth is permanent now." For the first time in years I felt like I could breathe without flinching. Lila was safe. I was strong. And Jenna? She was exactly where she belonged, on the outside looking in. Weeks passed. Seasons changed. And every day the house became more ours. One afternoon, while baking cookies together, Lila looked up at me with chocolate on her chin and said, "When I grow up, I want to be a mommy like you." I laughed. "You mean exhausted and covered in flour?" "No," she said softly. "I mean the kind that loves all the way through." I hugged her tighter than I ever had. Because that was the moment I realized something crucial. This wasn't just a revenge story. It was a healing one. We had survived. We had built something beautiful out of ashes. And while Jenna tried to tear us down from afar, she could never touch what we had built. She underestimated me. But more than that, she underestimated the power of choosing love over fear. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well and making sure they know it. 3 years later. Lila turned 7. She wanted a princess party with glitter slime, strawberry cupcakes, and a real-life pony. I delivered on everything but the pony. She forgave me after a surprise bounce house magically appeared in the backyard. The laughter of her and her friends echoed through the neighborhood that afternoon, brighter than the sun. I stood at the kitchen window, frosting the last tray of cupcakes, watching her dance under a flurry of bubble wands. She was growing into a kind, smart, fiery little girl. And happy. Truly happy. And I was finally at peace. But then karma came knocking, loud and merciless. I got the call late one evening. It was Sandra. Her voice was calm, but there was a charge behind every word. "You're going to want to sit down for this," she said. I did. "Jenna's been arrested," she continued. "Federal charges. Wire fraud. Forging estate documents. She's been running similar inheritance scams for years. Your mother wasn't her only victim. She's going to prison, Kayla. For a long, long time." I sat there in stunned silence, the world pausing. "She tried to ruin me," I said quietly. Sandra's voice softened. "And she ended up destroying herself instead." That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering all the nights I cried myself to sleep, all the times I doubted myself, all the lies, manipulation, and betrayal Jenna had spewed like venom. Now she'd finally been exposed for what she was. Justice had taken its sweet time, but it came. And it was thorough. Over the next few weeks, news of her arrest spread across town. The scandal was in the local paper, on the radio, even whispered about in the pews of the church she used to attend. People who once defended her now crossed the street to avoid her name. But I didn't gloat. I didn't parade. I simply lived. One afternoon I took Lila to the town's annual fall festival. We wore matching scarves. She painted a pumpkin. I drank hot cider. And as we were leaving, a woman stopped me. She was older, maybe mid-60s, with soft eyes and a polite smile. "You're Kayla, right?" she asked. I nodded cautiously. "I knew your mother," she said. "Not well, but enough. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything you went through. And I'm glad the truth finally came out." I thanked her, holding Lila's hand a little tighter. She paused before walking away. "You know, your daughter looks just like you did when you were little. Except stronger." I didn't know what to say. But her words stayed with me. Strong. Lila was strong. And she got that strength from watching me fight, fall, and rise again. A few months later I got one last letter. This one was stamped. Postmarked from the state prison. "Jenna." Inside. "You think you won. But you don't know the half of it. There are still people who believe me. Who think you're a liar. That you poisoned everything. But none of that matters anymore. I'll be out eventually. You'll always have to watch your back." I didn't respond. I simply dropped the letter in the shredder and watched it become dust. Because that was all she had left. Empty threats. Old poison. But I had Lila. I had a life. A real one. One built on truth, love, and resilience. I opened my laptop later that evening and began writing everything down. Our story, her lies, my silence, the battles, the courtroom, the heartbreak, the letter from my mom, and the final twist of fate. Not to publish. Not to post. But so that one day when Lila was old enough she could read it. Not to remember the pain, but to understand the power of fighting for yourself. Of standing tall even when everything inside you feels shattered. Of never letting someone else define your worth. And of always, always, choosing to rewrite your story. Because that's what I did. She took everything in the divorce. But she forgot the one secret that could ruin her. The truth. And in the end it was all I needed. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, leave a comment and subscribe for more. New episodes drop daily. Each one a journey of betrayal, resilience, and sweet, sweet justice.